day here. So a few housekeeping things. First thing is today is SAT day for all of the juniors pretty much in the state of Connecticut. So right above on this floor, right above you on the second floor and the third floor, our juniors are in the middle of SAT testing. So just so that you're aware of that. You won't hear any bells or things like that. So I just want you to know about that. However, you will have a tour. So I want to make sure that you are able to stick around for that. We'll probably confine the tour primarily to our shop wing, but we have 13 shops, so you have plenty of places to visit. So, don't fear that. Couple other housekeeping things. The restroom keys are right in the back. And if you were to exit either of these doors and you walk around, it goes right around the column in the middle of the hallway there. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention at this point, if there were a reason to evacuate the building, a fire alarm or whatever, very easy, either one of these doors, literally the stairwell is right through this wall. So you would just make a right and walk right out of the door there. All right, so I just want to make sure everybody knows where to go in the event of an emergency. Please enjoy some breakfast items. I will be back at the end of the meeting to talk a little bit about Caner and also to introduce you to your tour guides. And I've been telling folks, it will not be me or anyone on staff. It will be the people who really know the school. And that's our students, and I'll introduce them. So with that, please, I'd like to welcome Dr. Christine Benz, our board chairman, and enjoy your meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm very excited for our board meeting at CTECS school today. So welcome to the March 26th CTECS board meeting, and I would like to call the meeting to order at 9:31. And Ron,
Absolutely. Dr. Betts.
Yeah.
Mr. Malloy.
Present.
Mr. Auger. Mr. Birch.
Here.
Mr. Coyne. Mr. Gilday.
Here.
Mr. Hall. Mr. Norton.
Here.
Dr. Valeri. Dr. Birch.
Here. Perfect, thank you. Then please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the United States and to the republic for the nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Participate.
Madam Chair, if I may, we're ordered. Usually after a pledge of allegiance, sometimes there's a moment of silence. My mother was a graduate of this fine institution in 1967, passed away 3 weeks ago, and will be a funeral this weekend. I forgot her diploma today, but it was just an honor for me to see it validating going in 60 years ago. She would have been a graduate. I was a graduate of this school as well, but it's just good to be back in her alma mater and mine, joining you today. Thank you.
Okay, next agenda item would be the consideration of minutes. You all have the minutes in your package and reviewed them. May I have a motion to improve the February 26th board meeting minutes?
Second.
Very much. Any objections? Not, the meeting minutes are approved.
I would abstain because I wasn't here. So
Okay. With that, the motion carries, and we have the next agenda item, the report of the executive director, not interim.
Thank you. So I want to just, yes, thank you very much. Very glad to be here. And again, just so enjoying having every other meeting on site. I love the virtual meetings as well, but it's really nice to be back on site at school. So thank you all for making the trek. So I have a couple of things I want to run through and then a brief presentation that we're going to do, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Burr to do a superintendent update and also a presentation. So we have a couple of things for you all today. So I just want to give you some updates on continued administrative activities. So I have continued to meet and members of my team with the Office of the Governor and Office of OPM on a very regular basis, every other week at the least. And that's just been incredibly helpful. When I tell people that OPM is being incredibly helpful, they're glad to hear it. And so I say it as often as I can because they really have been just tremendous thought partners about how to solve some of our current issues. And that's just been a great thing to do. I want to report that we are formalizing a number of central office meetings to try to address issues and start to plan for the year ahead. I've started a small executive team. Freeman has done the same. We have a leadership team that is largely administrative with the assistant superintendents joining us. And then we're going to have our first central office virtual town hall at the end of April. Again, just trying to increase communication where we can and also pull together some cross-functional teams to think about moving forward. Also meeting with the principals regularly, which has been really helpful. I have one site visit left. I have to go to Stratford on Tuesday. Otherwise, I've hit all 20 locations in 3 months. My car knows it. But it has really been a really wonderful experience. I've been welcomed by students who are just the most amazing kids you've ever seen, but also by instructors and staff and certainly the administration. So it's been really great to be out on the visits. And I just want to do a shout out to SVFT leadership and ASTL leadership, who we've been meeting with every other week to hear their concerns, improve communication. And I'm really pleased with how that is going as well. On the legislative front, yesterday we had our finance subcommittee hearing where we commented on the governor's bond bill proposals for us. This does include about $30 million for infrastructure, which is incredibly helpful. A lot of deferred maintenance, which we have been paying through our operating budget, hopefully can get shifted to our bond budget. And resources to continue the planning for moving a new school in Wyndham. Very important, some stuff at O'Brien, not O'Brien. Sorry, in Britain, I think it's Goodwin actually instead. But we have some ongoing projects, some new projects, and a lot of deferred maintenance to catch up on. So I will say both at finance and then in appropriations, where we had a subcommittee working group since I saw you last, we're getting good questions, hard questions, many of them not fiscal at all. But overall, I would say we're getting a lot of really good feedback on our system and what we do, and they're wanting us to do more than we can do right now. So that's all going really well. And organizationally, we have been doing a number of assessments and reviews, and we'll have more to report on those in the future. But, you know, again, trying to take this moment to own our shortcomings and address them with no blame and no accusations of how we got here, but just, you know, moving forward, because there's a lot to fix and people are rolling up their sleeves and getting ready to help us do that. We had the opportunity to announce a couple of new faces this morning, and I want to call out Dr. Heidi Gray, our new HR director. Heidi's waving. Gennaro DeAngelis, our new CFO. Heidi's been with us for 2 months. Gennaro's working on week 3. So they're coming along. We have a legal director who we will announce later today, hopefully, who will start on May 2nd. Michael Pereira, who has been at DAS, will join our team. He's got great employment and education experience and very, very excited to join the team. So those were the major kind of cabinet level positions that we were looking to fill when I arrived. And so happy to say that those are all filled and the team is rounding out, and we've got great work ahead of us. One other posting that you may have seen, the principal at Prince, Charlie Shushan, has announced his retirement for August 1st. The announcement went out to his school on Monday. And so that search is going to get started. We do expect one or two additional school principal jobs will be posted this spring in hopes that we can get those also wrapped up before the end of the school year. We're waiting on a few things to fall in place to figure out what those are. But, oh, I'm sorry, I want to go back and just for 1 second. Those of you who have been working with the system will know that there were people trying to hold down the fort in legal and in finance and in HR. And I just want to, again, thank your predecessors for being here, or being with us during those years. Aaron and Kelly and Keisha all did amazing work to get us here, and they're all very excited to be passing the torch. Keisha now proudly calls herself the assistant to the CFO, so she can step back in her role, and Kelly is excited for Michael's arrival as well. So again, excited about all of this kind of alignment going on in our offices and also at the schools. So sorry, I'm saying I'm a lot. The budget, I just want to quickly report, nothing has moved since I saw you last. I think the appropriations committee budget will be out within about a week. So we'll have a sense of whether the appropriations committee wants to add money to what the governor has offered to us. But as you'll remember, the governor's proposal provides us with about $13 million of additional funding, but that gets us to flat funding. So we are saying that to them on a regular basis, and they understand and appreciate that, but they were trying to get us to kind of a current spending rate. We will continue to talk to them about those things, but we are managing a deficit for sure. Still hovering in about the $10 to $12 million neighborhood, depending on the day. And OPM will address that with the legislature before the end of the fiscal year. But it's been a very tight year. It's been a very challenging fiscal year to manage, but we're really hopeful that we'll be in a better position come July 1 to manage our situation. But and let me see, and I just want to do a couple other quick shares. There were several activities in the past week or so that have just, again, I wasn't at any of them, but they caught my attention and I wanted to tell you all about them. So at Platt this week or sometime in the last 7 days, the Precision Manufacturing had an event with Manufacturer CT and 35 industry partners that looked absolutely fabulous. At Bullard Havens, they had an event for their PAC meeting that was covered on News 12 with 25 auto industry employers interviewing our students. Also amazing. We had an event recently with the National Association of Women in Construction to celebrate Women in Construction Week. And we had students from Prince and women from business and industry there as well. And then I was telling Jim just a little bit ago at Emmett O'Brien, the 9th graders got a nice set of tools from Haas as part of a big event, huge toolboxes on their desk. And so those are just wonderful things that are happening out in our schools. That's just in like the last week or so. So I encourage you to keep track of all of those things. And this is my segue, unless anybody has questions for me. I asked Dr. Brett McCartney if he would give you all an update on work-based learning. I know that, this is really one of the, it's really a gem of this system that students get to go out and work while they're juniors and seniors. And so Brett's going to give us an update, and he's Dr. Brett because he has just finished his dissertation. Yes, please. I'm sorry. Yes.
I just want to get back to the budget piece.
Absolutely. Sorry, Jim. Yes, please.
Again, it's recognizing maybe a tough spot, but have we had any discussions with Tony or Kathy in appropriations? Are we able to advocate there, or do we feel we probably shouldn't because we don't want to be in contradiction with the governor's office? I just heard to a level we're engaging appropriations about the need for more money.
So your assessment is correct. As a state agency, we are supportive of the governor's allocation to our system. But Tony, Kathy, Tony Walker and Kathy Olson asked very pointed questions during the committee. And so I feel like they understand. They can also, everybody can see what we did ask for versus what the governor gave us. So there's a real visible sign that we asked for about $8 million more. than ultimately they put in. And so they certainly noticed that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't identify some areas where they'd like to see us have some expansion and throw some resources in that way. But yes, we are very appreciative of the governor's budget. Did the same thing yesterday in finance. They asked what wasn't covered in the bond package, and thankfully it was all right there in the budget bill, so I could just, point back to it and say, yes, there are things that we didn't get on the first ask, but I just do think that our biweekly conversation with OPM help them realize that the number may not be perfect, but again, they've been just really responsive and said, we know, and we were not asked for clawbacks when everybody else, not everybody, but a lot of agencies were asked for givebacks. And we were not. We've had some freezing of positions and things, but none of these big ones that they really needed to fill. So that's so we've been in a good place with them, but also with charity appropriations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also appreciative of your unexpended funds initiative, how you slipped that in at the end of your testimony yesterday.
Yes, that adult education is needed. Yes. Okay, Glenn, take it away.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for, congratulations, applause. I appreciate that. So I was asked to be brief and I will do my best, but we got a lot of good things going on. So I want to make sure that you know about them. So the first slide, I'd like to read line by line. I provided this just so you can kind of see the broad picture, but really we're going to go to the next slide and break this up a little bit for you. So WBL, we're about 5% over this time, more than this time last year, which is great. So this time last year, we had about 1,042. We're at 1,094. So that's, 52 placements is really good. And, that happens consistently. If you've noticed throughout the years, our WBL numbers are increasing yearly. So that number, so that we can kind of put it in context for the 11th and 12th graders, that's about a fifth, right? 20% of our eligible, well, we won't say eligible, say our 11th and 12th graders, there's 5,300. And so we have about 20% of them on work-based learning, which is great. In that number, there's 359 pre-apprentices, Mr. Birch. And 58 of them, because I know this comes up often, are from PMT. So that's great. So there's 155 PMT students on work-based learning or participating in work-based learning, and 58 of them are pre-apprentices, which all of those numbers are up. So last year, we're overall pre-apprentices, we're about 36 more than last year. And we're about 11 more in PMT pre-apprentices. So it's really good space. There are some numbers on there though that are a little bit troubling. So you can see O'Brien is about 24 placements lower. Well, their senior student body is lower. And they've also had some staffing issues in the shop, which I think he starts beginning of April. So hopefully we'll see some of those numbers shoot up. But and Wyndham was another one that was a little bit lower. But in these, and then we have the historically low, right? So Goodwin, Prince, Whitney, and Wright. So we've been really trying to do a better job of talking to students about this early. So the deans have been getting into shops, talking about WBL early, and then we're getting out. I'll talk about the WBL at a glance, but we're trying to just make this a little bit more palatable, right? So a little bit smaller so that they can understand what it is. So then on the right side of the screen there, you can see per shop. So there's, everyone's really around where they were last year. IT and culinary, I've talked to both of those consultants. They're an area that we would probably want to look at because they're a little bit lower, kind of a lot lower than they used to be. But before I go to the next slide, I just want to highlight, well, I guess we can go to the next slide, it doesn't matter. So on this next slide, I have some highlights for you. What I did put on there was the efforts that are going on. So I just want to talk about those first. The first one is in culinary. So that's an effort really about communication. So there's a lot of, I guess you got to think about WBL as really having two functions. The first function that we all think about is getting a student to go to work instead of coming to school, right? And that is definitely one of the functions. But The other function is getting a student that is 16 and 17 years old into an occupation that you typically have to be 18 years old. So culinary is one of those that this is typically an after-school placement. So we have to, and we've done it, but I think we have to do a better job of communicating that to deans and teachers. Like those need to be reported. Just because they're not getting school release, it's still a WBL placement. So to use slicers and certain things, they need to be 18 typically. So that's one of the efforts. Eastern is in talks with Wyndham. I didn't put it on here because they haven't technically hired somebody yet, but they're in talks. And I know the dean, Stacy, there has been working for a while to kind of get in there. What you can see up here is UConn. They've expanded. So last year, UConn had a bunch of Wyndham Tech students, but they've hired 5 plumbers out of Prince this year, which is fantastic. Other things that I had mentioned, IT was a little bit lower. IT has changed. A lot of these folks are working from home now, which is a little bit problematic, but I just wanted to talk about that effort. So we're still making that work. We're working with employers to say, yeah, they can do WBL from the building, but then we have to explain how the teacher's going to get a 30-minute lunch and they're going to get a prep. And also their mentor is going to be the person that the student goes to, not the teacher. So it takes a little bit more of hand-holding, but these are kind of some of the things that we're doing. Another effort I wanted to highlight, I don't know if you've had the pleasure of meeting Dave Cruikshanks from Vinyl Criminal Justice yet, but I mean, if we could clone him, let's do it. It's worth it. But he has a lot of ambulance companies that will come and say, we want to hire all your students, but they can't because they pay per call. So he's working with them and we've been in talks about creating a minimum wage for these students, maybe with a stipend that happens if their call money would go over that. And then he's also making modules. He's always had online training for his credentials, but he's also talking about making modules because when they're not on call, they're sitting around, we can't have that, so that they can do those online modules. All right, promise to be brief, so I'll run through this a little bit now. Also out of his shop, there's 9 students right now working for the Department of Mental Health and Addiction, which is new this year, which is great. Electric Boat took WBL students, so they have their internships and they have the stuff that they do in the summer, but now they're starting to take students during the year. Sikorsky, I'm sure everybody probably knows about Sikorsky, but they have this dialed in so well. So if you don't know, they have an internship, not an internship, they pay the students, they call it an internship because they work with the Teamsters. So that's how they can get the students in. But basically when a student signs up, they get their junior and senior summer to work with them. But what's nice about this is it's aligned to a job. So last year we graduated 26 seniors that were a part of that. All of them were hired. So they're in their application window right now. So it's another really good thing that's going on. Avangrid's in their 3rd year of doing their internship. Again, not an internship. I think they make $30 an hour. And then Gilbane has some unpaid opportunities. Gilbane has started taking Bullard Haven students and allowing them to kind of shadow and work with their project management team, which has been really, really good in the construction trades there. And then I feel like I'm going along. So upcoming events, we will have signing days. We'll try to get those dates out to folks. So they're the national signing day, but there's a lot of schools that don't use that date. So we'll try to get those to you and what those look like. And then to highlight Caner, they're doing what they're calling a career connection day. So it's a flipped career fair. So typically a career fair, you have tables all around and the students walk around. Now industry is going to come into this school on May 13th and walk around the school to visit students in their spaces. There will be also available space to do interviews. And the Northwest Regional Investment Board and the Waterbury Chamber of Commerce has been working with the dean here to help prep those students for those interviews. So we have a lot of others. I hate promoting some things because you're going to miss some things, but I just wanted to give you kind of a snapshot of some of the good stuff that's good. Anybody have any questions?
I do. I'm curious how UConn was involved in this.
So on their facility side,
Oh,
they're hiring plumbers, they're hiring, yeah. And they're
Because I'm-
apprentices.
Looking at CSCU and
That's my
how we would
office.
be more
My
involved.
office, at the medical and office.
Got it. Great, that's great.
But CSC, you could certainly be thinking about.
I know, right?
It is, and I met with Hartford Healthcare, and every time we meet with them, we always talk about health tech. But this time I was like, what about IT and facilities? And they were Because you gotta think, a lot of our schools that have the transportation issues have a hospital right in that town. So we're kind of in talks to try to figure that out too, to get them into some of these hospitals, on the facilities groups.
Great, thank you.
Very basic question. So we
Yeah.
have work-based learning, we have career apprenticeships, and we have internships. Some of them are paid, some of them are unpaid. Can you run us through the differences and similarities of these?
One segue. So in your packet, I provided a WVL at a glance document
Uh-huh.
that explains, kind of gives you the bare bones that you would need to promote this and kind of turn it over, to get them to turn it over. So on the front, it explains the 4 kinds of placements we have. And the only difference between a pre-apprentice and a regular placement is just that they're getting hours towards an apprenticeship or a licensure. But so on here, it kind of describes what is available to students, because some students play sports, some students want to have high school experience, or they watch young ones after school. So we can still do job shadowing and stuff like that to give them this experience. So that's kind of listed. I've also listed out their eligible hours because it does change depending on what semester we're on. And on the back, so this could be a digital resource or this could be a printed resource. On the back, I've kind of given you the web pages, which Carrie has done a great job of designing for folks to kind of take in this information. So the title's a link if it's digital, and then the QR code you can scan to kind of get more information as you're talking to people. And then, I don't know if we're experts, whatever you want to call us, per trade, who kind of oversees the trade is there too. So you can, as people are interested in programming, they can contact us. As they're interested in WBL, they can contact the dean at each school. And then the rest of this is just where our programming is. The one form, a lot of times employers are like, oh, is there so much? There's one form for them to fill out, it's right here. And then past this form, they're going to get a request for an Adobe signature, that's it. The second form that's on here is the log, just to show the student fills this out and the mentor gives them a rating on the bottom. And then our locations that have WVL, so you'll notice the aviation's not on here because they don't have WVL. And then the hardest thing to understand at CTECS sometimes, our calendar. You can ignore a lot of this. It's really the center that is important here, because when we say they can work on their trade cycle, people are like, what does that mean? This is an example of, I think this year's Prince's calendar for this year. That's their cycle. So when seniors are in shop or juniors are in shop, they can participate in WVL. So that's WVL at a glance.
And just one more quick question and then we'll move on, but can you talk about where you see challenges with WBL and, kind of what your strategies are, the lower numbers?
Sure. So some of them are out of our control. So I'll take plumbing and HVAC, for instance. Plumbing's probably in the construction trades biggest need, but the problem is ratio. So we have an issue with getting phone calls. Oh, we'll take all your kids, but they're not within ratio for training. The problem with HVAC is there's a lot of dual licensing happening there. So they'll hire a licensed HVAC tech, but want them to have their plumbing license also. So they're now taking an apprentice spot also. So that is an issue in the construction trades that continues to kind of bring us down. Transportation is always an issue, even though our numbers are going up. It's an issue. I don't think if we solve that we're going to see drastic numbers. I really don't, because I do think that generationally our students are ready to wait to work. I think I went to work the minute they told me I could go to work, and I haven't stopped. But generationally, I think that they're happier having a high school experience. So like Wyndham, when I reached out to talk to them, that's what they're dealing with. They're just dealing with students who are like, yeah, I'm going to stick with the trade, but I'm going to do it when I graduate. So I do think that that's something that we're seeing, even though the numbers are going up. I do think that that's something.
The comment, all the schools issue, and be remiss if I didn't ask, they issue the form ED 301 for working papers for all schools, doing that for regardless of if they're in regular employment or free.
Are we supplying working papers? So when we worked with, and I know Tom's not there anymore, it's an outdoor, but when we worked with Tom, we discussed that since our forms are coming from Power School, which is verifies their age, that we were not.
Okay, good.
So our LED, last year, I think, for those of you that were here, I reported out how everything's digitized now. So we went from like a 3 to 4 week approval process to now 24 hours, which is maintained. Tom Wydra has moved on, and now Dora is in there, and it's maintained that 24 hours. But when we did that, we kind of thought it was redundant.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Mr. Burr, are you available to give us a short report as well?
I think so. I'll start with my school visit. So, the 6 schools under my supervision, I completed those visits about a month ago. I'm currently going to the other schools that are not under my direct supervision. And where I can be creative, such as today, I try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So today is our board advisory board meeting, but it's also my visit to Kingdom as well. And then Friday for Skills USA, I will be at Wilcox as well. And I think after that, I have Platt, Grasso, and Danielson remaining. So I'm hoping to get those done before vacation. Obviously, I was set back for a month when I was in a full cast. I wasn't able to drive. To that end, I want to also thank Monty for helping me get through 2 visits as my personal Uber driver. And that was very helpful. Even my wife drove me to one site, and that was even more helpful. My site visits, essentially, whether it's one of my formal schools or informal, take on the same. I go to school, I brief with the principal just to get caught up on, what's on their radar at the moment. I go through a needs assessment that all schools and principals received from me back in January. And we go through that. That essentially highlights what they perceive to be their strengths, their weaknesses, okay, how they organize their current staffing effort, okay? Notice I didn't add additional resources, okay? How they organize their current staffing resources to address the areas that they have concerns or focus on. I also asked them to identify any gaps that they see that we may need to look at. And then lastly, they can give some input to me on any support from central office and beyond. Okay. All my visits are like that. The distinction is with the formal visits, I write up a summary report, hit on all those things. Informal visits are just that. If I have some input after an informal visit, I follow up generally with an email. With respect to the 6 schools that I'm currently directly supervising, Alice mentioned Prince, so I will say collectively, our central office curriculum department, our director of accountability and myself, along with Alice's agreement, we are applying for commissioner network status for Prince Tech. It's really needed. And we want to really focus on Prince for the coming year. We think there's tremendous opportunity in Prince, but sometimes there are opportunity and fulfilling the potential. And so our focus in the coming year will be fulfilling the potential that we believe that Prince has. Other things, last month at the principals meeting, I want to tip my hat to Nikki's department in curriculum and Javette's department in special ed. We gathered and had discussions, a couple of discussions, for about a month before last principals meeting. And then Brent McCartney, as well as Suzanne Cratch, one of our central office special education supervisors, along with the special education team, put together a presentation for principals. While this might be the year 2025, there are still huge issues within us as CTECs for the distinctions around accommodations to student learning and modifications to curriculum. Okay, and those distinctions are not clear. So what we decided to do is take a step back, make a presentation to principals on that. Again, the special ed team and Brent did a great job presenting to the principals. Principals were asked to turnkey that in their own schools with collaboration from the administrative leadership team as well as the special education leadership team. We really want the notion of collaboration to come across because ultimately, when we provide accommodations to students, those don't only come from the special ed side, they have to be applied and integrated into our tier one instruction as well. Likewise, curriculum modifications. We have not put a hold on our curriculum mods. The challenge we have with our modifications to curriculum is we have pockets of work being done all over CTECS. What is unclear, okay, from a central office perspective, and also trying to align and create a systemic approach. We've got people doing different things. So what we're trying to do is really get that. To that end, we're looking at the end of April or early May. And what we want to do is bring in a team of educators, both regular as well as any special educators, to have a roundtable. We've already told principals it'll be a day, whether it will be 2 half days or 1 whole day. That'll be driven by what principals need at their schools. Half day will be for our instructional staff, be they special ed or regular ed, to share what they've been doing with respect to modifications to the curriculum. That is also in that roundtable will be curriculum people from central office as well as special education people, because we really have to get a handle on that. From that, we're hoping to take the information that we receive and come up with a systemic plan to roll out. Curriculum modifications take an awful lot of time. We have to be very judicious and deliberate in our approach. I'll close with that by saying, earlier this year, we encountered a course, an algebra course that was modified to such an extent, it was no longer algebra. So one of the things we have to be clear about with respect to modifications, since we're offering students credit, we have to meet the state standards around credits. So that's another reason why we want to make sure we have a coherent approach to what we're going to do with respect to curriculum modifications going forward. And with that, I'll close.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we're gonna pause on Patty for just a moment and jump ahead in the agenda so that.
Exactly, that's just the slide.
Can I just ask one real brief question on,
Yes.
the resources associated with being part of Commissioners Network is significant. What is the likelihood, do you think, of these events becoming successful, and what is the timeline, do you think, for knowing when that we're accepted? I think that we,
Commissioners Network, when do we hear,
Commissioners
what's our
Network,
chance and when do we hear?
For commissioner.
Uh-huh.
Okay. It's a process.
I get it.
Okay, and we're one, we only have one school going in on CTECS. So obviously, the State Department gets other applications as well. We do have 5 other schools that are what we consider to be pre-commissioner network schools. Those schools are currently getting some training from the state. I think we're fairly confident the majority of those schools will avoid commissioner network. Nikki, do we know exactly when we're going to hear from the state?
No, we applied on, I think the application was due March 14th, which we applied. It looks good to get in, based on our accountability score, our report card, our SAT, SAT scores. But they can let us know shortly.
Usually, and it's been a couple of years since I've worked with Commissioner Network Schools. They're kind of a 3-year.
Yep.
And they're monitored based on their plans. Usually first year, there's a little more funding is cut back.
Derby has a school.
Yeah, you have.
Very familiar with the process.
All right.
Thank you.
So that's what I was trying to get my arms around. I don't really know what a commissioner network school
All right,
is.
so can we put it
Pause on that, sure.
just for just a moment, and
Sure.
then, because I don't want to Paul to have to leave, and then we'll
Exactly.
come back to it.
Sure.
So we jump to the report of the chair and then
Go
come
back,
back.
that's fine.
Because Paul has to leave at 10:15, and the most important item on the report of the chair is an update on the superintendent search. And Paul has chaired the search committee, so I hand it over to you for an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do apologize. I have to leave at 10:15 for the ribbon cutting at the Manufacturing Center at CT State Tunxus. With the governor.
Gonna be going
Very excited. We're very excited to welcome that. That'll be the 11th manufacturing facility at CT State. So as we continue to have kids come through this system, we have a great place for them to land to continue their education in so many areas at CT State, but certainly manufacturing. So an update on the superintendent search. The search committee has been working diligently on the process. We have built a collaborative, objective process to work candidates through the system. So we have structured rubrics that we bring candidates through, and then we individually score the candidates, we consolidate those scores, and then we have lively discussions about candidates and moving candidates along the process. We have gone through the initial review of the pool of candidates. We've narrowed that down to what we would call round 1 of candidates. We've advanced from round 1 into round 2. We're currently completed with round 2 and we're ready to advance to round 3. Round 3 of the process is to have the candidates that have made it to this far, at this point, to meet with a business and industry committee, which board members have been assigned to, and then an education committee, which board members have been assigned to. And this is for the board members on those committees to become familiar with the candidates and to really kind of get some insight for the candidates as to how they work with business and industry and the education process as well. After that, we will present candidates to the executive director for her decision. And all of the candidates that will make it through that process, as far as the search committee is concerned, will be viable candidates to play the role, to become the next superintendent for this system. So nobody gets to Alice that we don't feel is qualified to be able to do that. I will give you the caveat that Alice reserves the right to reject all of our candidates. So we hope we don't get to that point. We do believe as a committee that and I have asked this question of the committee at certain checkpoints. Do you feel that our next superintendent is in the pool of candidates that we're going to move forward? And we've gone from let me see to yes. So we're confident now that as we go into round 3, that we have candidates that will continue to do the great work that we're doing and continue to take this system to the next level. So that's an update on the process. Our objective is to get through the process and by certainly I think we said April 15th was kind of our deadline to get candidates to Alice for her to be able to evaluate. And then of course onboarding will depend upon their schedules and the negotiation that will happen after that. So that's where we are. Anybody have any questions as to the process?
That's great.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for all the work you put into this process. We have made great progress, and we are hopeful to have the superintendent on board shortly. With that, if there are no questions, we hand it back over to Karen.
Oh,
Yep.
what is a commissioner network?
Commissioner of Education has schools that require our attention. based on performance.
Okay.
So we principally looked at for a couple of years, given where it is now, and it's kind of flat. That's one reason why we took the step to apply for
For that,
commissioner.
okay.
If, we send in the rationale why we're doing that, okay, what our justification is. If it's granted, I think this piggybacks on Jim's question. If it's granted, then what we do is we write up a proposal, because there are some months, associated with that. And then we'll talk about based on what we submit, the areas that we have concerns, and then how we continue with that application. And what our strategies and action steps are, and how we would use any funds to support that as well.
Okay. So it's a great resource. I'm assuming
It's-
get some funding.
It's not like you're going to fund the school.
Right. But it just.
It's supplemental.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
What really matters is that, that you're taking a strategic approach
Yeah.
and beyond the fiscal, not to beat a dead horse, Keith, but I think you'd appreciate this. But, any fiscal resources you get, how are you currently using your existing resources to basically support the areas that you're trying to make it? So it's kind of a balance. And that sometimes is a challenge because, I think for many years, and having worked with commissioner and alignment schools, most people think about money first. And really the approach is really about plan.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
how are we going to create a plan within the school that addresses the needs we want?
Sounds great. Okay, thank you.
So the funding is not just funding, but the funding is there to support structurally
Exactly.
what the application, what the plan is to help boost this institution. So it's no longer commissioning center. It's like you always want to get out off of that list somehow. And this offers the supports and some funding to help.
The goal is not to remain commissioner.
It's not a.
What I was worried about, it's okay, so.
Precursor for funding is actually an actual ask prior to saying, just give me the money, we'll fix this.
Yeah.
Versus the-
Right.
Let's, nothing support, financial, we all know that cake to support the students. It's not-
Yeah.
I just would like to make a comment before I leave. Again, apologize for leaving, but, and this is on enrollment, and looking, I have read the enrollment report. I'm always fascinated with the disconnect between the actual perception of our technical high school system and the actual reality. We can have a potential board member go before the legislature and get berated for increasing participation in the technical high schools when we turn away 70% of the kids that apply. And so that disconnect should not escape this board, in that we need to do a really good job of letting everybody in the state of Connecticut know that this system is in high demand, and we're turning away, for every 3 kids that apply, we're turning away 2, right? And we're not doing that for any other reason that we just don't have the capacity to do that. That's number one. Number two, I live for the day when we get everything on a stable footing here at CTECS, and we can have the conversation about increasing capacity. We're not ready to have that conversation yet to increase the capacity. There's so many other things we need to do to level set, but I know that this team is committed to getting there, and I'm excited for that. But I live for the day when much like I live for the day to see a FIRST Robotics banner hanging up in sports gyms, which I saw that day, by the way, at Wilby the other day. But the day when we can get to that level set and then go back to the legislature and say, we need to increase capacity in this technical high school system, and we need to make significant investments in doing that for the health of the kids. If we have 10,000 kids that want to get in and we're admitting 3, that tells me a story that we should be listening to. So as we get to the enrollment part, I'm going to go talk to the governor right now, and I'm going to drop that right this year.
I know there's a grade fall with that on the 9 to 12 level, but this is also an adult education forum as well.
Yeah.
So that seems to be lost in the conversation a lot of time. The amount of the enrollees that are adults in the evening and we're not fortunate enough to get into the system or go to a comprehensive. I think if you're remiss, we do have that capacity at night. We need to actually tell success of that model as well.
I agree, and I think every educational institution, from technical high schools to community colleges to four-year universities, need to really start paying attention to adult learning because as more kids choose pathways that don't involve college, they are going back to school at some point. Everybody's going back to school at some point if you want to have a career. I had a 2-year degree, went to work, and then Boston told me I wasn't going anywhere until I got a 4-year degree. I went back to and got it at night, right? So not a traditional path, but so every education, any education, higher education institution needs to be looking at adult learning right now, seriously. Because it's more, again, more kids choose that path, they're going back to school at some point. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, I will call Patty King, who has been leading our admissions work, to come up and give you a little bit of this, but, Todd is also echoing what I said, yesterday in the finance committee, which is that, yes, we are at capacity more, we have a little bit more capacity in the high school programs, I'm confident, but we have plenty of capacity, I think, in the adult program. And we did plan to have adult education be our presentation today, but Pat Charlie is out on short leave. But we will have him come to the committees and pick up that conversation as well. But so for those of you who have not met Patty King, she has been fearlessly leading our admissions process, and really excited to have her give you all a little bit of an overview about our move to the lottery. I do want to say, in my reading of our kind of rules engagement to the board, we should have probably had this conversation in October or November. I wasn't here to have it, but I'm here now. But I think, this conversation probably would have helped you all to have known that we were going to the lottery. There's been a lot of confusion about the fact that we were going to the lottery, but we have gone to a lottery, we have executed a lottery, and Patty can give you an update. And to Paul's point, we admitted maybe 50%, more like 40% of the students who apply. And I just want to thank Patty publicly for taking many of the emails and calls associated with those who did not get in, who have been very unhappy because they really were counting on their kids getting in. So, as you said, lots and lots of demand. So, Patty, without further ado,
Thank you so much. That was a good segue as well. And I'm happy that we had that conversation. Exactly. We have a lot of wonderful programs, as you all know. Just got to get the kids in there. And I always look at my position really as, if I don't get the kids in, if we don't get the kids in, none of us have jobs. So this is an important piece to the whole thing. So today, as Dr. Pritchard mentioned, my goal today is really just to talk to you about what is our cycle, what does our system look like, why did we transition, what are some of our current outcomes, and where do we go from here? So without further ado, take a look first at this is really our snapshot of where we are today at CTECS with our applications for next year's rising ninth graders. So this is only based on the ninth grade. I do take applications for 10th graders, but really our focus is generally on rising ninth graders to get them in. And as you can see by and you all have a packet there, as you can see, the wait list is considerably larger than the ones that we currently have placed or offered. So it's really a third of all the applications that we get. And I included in this number that the applications we receive also from what we call our retro schools. So those are our 3 Hartford schools who participate in the lottery through the Office of School Choice out of Hartford. So, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But here's so far we've received over 10,000 applications. We only have 3,485 seats available throughout that number is throughout our, all of our schools, including the rest of the schools. And right now we have 3,000 students that have actually been placed. And when I say placed, what I mean is they have said, we place them, provide them with an offer. And then after they have that offer in place, then they tell us whether they're going to come or whether they're going to decline. And we go from there. So, some questions are, well, why are all the seats full at this point in time? Well, really, we're in a process. As I said, the admissions process never stops. I hate to say that, but we just roll from one into another. So as students decline, we then refill. So it does keep going. We're trying to manage that a little differently this year, rather than just a continual loop, try to do it in pockets. We've already gone through 2 pockets at this point, two iterations of the selections. And we probably had another one, or at least a mini one pulled from the waitlist in, probably at mid-April.
And then, so there is, after the application, only 2 outcomes for the student, either accepted or waitlisted. There is no decline. Nobody gets out.
No, we don't decline anymore.
Okay.
Not at all.
And then if a student gets a place offered, but then says, I reconsidered, I'm not coming, how do you decide who gets that seat off of the wait list?
That's a great question. We have a numeric wait list. So it's, the students are put in order by the system through the last.
So it's a random.
It's random.
Okay.
Talk about, actually, that's a good question. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's also a snapshot of our applications in green, dark green, and then how many offers and how many acceptances. And then the last is the wait list for each of our schools. So you can see some of our schools have extremely high numbers. And for some reason, and I apologize, I'll get this number to you, but for some reason, Bullard Havens got cut off on here. So, but Bullard Havens is one of our largest application pools that we've received. So I will get that to you. I should have a copy of you if you're interested. The last 4 columns on this chart are the Hartford Regional Schools. So Prince, Goodwin, and Cheney are our Resco schools. Resco, because they run their own lottery, some of the data I could not pull, so it's grouped rather than divided by school. That's why that looks a little wonky there, but that's just kind of gives you an idea. We do get quite a bit of applications for those Hartford schools as well. So we're always fielding calls about how do I like them? So that's one thing that we do.
What does that mean when you say they hold their own?
So the rest of the Hartford Regional Choice School Choice, they have their own application system that goes through the school choice office. I think we joined that school choice maybe 5 or 6 years ago that this has been in process. So they hold the lottery. They're the first ones who held the lottery for us. And now this year, all of our schools are lottery, but they still take care of those 3 because it works with the chef versus O'Neill, equity. Okay, so here's the big question we get asked all the time. Why did we move to a lottery? Well, you may remember earlier this school year, we had a lot of kind of back and forth as to what are we doing, what are we not doing. But really what we came down to is that, first of all, I can say I thought that this was the right way to go as far as equity is concerned and how we process information. But also the State Department of Ed said this is a good way to go as well. So that's really why we went to the lottery. Just to kind of give you a little background as to what were some of the things that we really feel is positive about the lottery. So the first one is about, as I mentioned, is about equity and access. Right now, when we have the lottery system, I think about the old church bazaar where we throw everybody in and crank it up, and it gives everybody that equal opportunity. Takes out all of the subjectivity that previously was had in the process because we did have 3 items that produced a score. Now we don't. Everyone, if you ask everyone who applies is in the lottery, as long as their application is complete and submitted. And then once they're through that lottery, as long as they want to stay in the pool, they can. Unless they tell me or tell the schools, I should say, that they wanted to give up that spot. Okay. I mentioned about subjectivity. So right now, everyone has an equal footing. In the past, we looked at students' attendance records from their 7th and 8th grade. We looked at their a recommendation that was given from their school counselor. And then they also had a written essay that you next be graded. So those three things, just listen right there, they're all subjective. Who's grading it, who's looking at it, what's is your counselor saying about you? So taking that subjectivity out allowed us to look at things differently and fresh set of eyes, which was very, very helpful. Not to mention the cadre of folks that were involved in that process as well. As I mentioned just a moment ago, it aligns with our state guidance. So really looking at how the rest of the lotteries run, how across the state school choice schools run their lotteries. I have many conversations with different districts to see what they find are the pros and the cons, how does it work, what's working, what's not. So those were really some of the drivers as well. And the last thing is it improves clarity for families. Yes and no. It does because it's the process is the process. But because we have many families who maybe had a student who went here prior or when they were graduates themselves, the process is different. So having to have those explanations, answer those phone calls and those emails, at least this second round, I'm not getting as many as I got. I got well over about 400 emails the first time, I think. Probably lost some of them in there, but there was a lot of them, not to mention the phone calls, but the clarity, the purpose there is to clarity. So how does the lottery work itself? So really there's 4 steps to this process. So I wanted it to come out nicely, but it didn't. So how the lottery works, really it's the first step is the application submission. All of our applications are collected online through our application portal. Brett mentioned Carrie, I'm going to mention Carrie also. Carrie has been wonderful in helping us set that up for all of our schools. So we have the high schools, have our rising 9th graders, we have an application for 10th graders, and we have an application for Bristol Tech, and then also adult ed. I don't work with the admissions for adult ed, but I do with Bristol Tech. So we have 3 different portals that we work with. So in order to be submitted or to be considered, we have to have a completed application, which there's certain requirements in the application that they must fill. They must hit that submit button. One of the next steps is to take a look at the eligibility requirements. So completed, submitted, and then the other is to have a student interest artifact. One of the things that we've talked with the district about now for a while is how do we know if a kid has an interest in our schools? And that's a great question. So what we have done is we have put in the option, or not the option, the choice of either submitting a video statement or a written statement. So the students had that opportunity, and they had 5 questions, and that's a few pages down, but there's 5 questions that they answered in order to share with us what is their intention, what is their drive, why do they want to have a tech education, and what do they want to do with that. So we trying to tease out from them what are they thinking, why do they want to be here. It does not get scored. So I've heard from many parents, well, why did my kid have to do that if nobody even scored it? I can guarantee, raise my hand, I did go through every single and watch every single video that came through. My husband would hear me sometimes if I was at home in the evenings watching, and he's like, what are you laughing? I'm like, they are just so darn cute. Oh my gosh. They are. So I would love to someday have those when they're seniors and do a little recap. I don't know if I'm able to do that, but oh my God, they're so cute. And then also with the written, I could pull it up all on my screen. And did I read them word for word? No. But as you're going through, you can scan and see what's in there. So every single application was checked for that requirement. And if you did not have that requirement in there, I then contacted the family, let them know that they had a window to get it completed by, and if it was not completed, it's considered incomplete, and I can't put it. So I have many people getting that next step in. The next is our random lottery drawing. So as I said, it's like going to church bazaar, roll it up there. So it really is student. The applications are in our electronic system. The electronic system that we have has a lottery system available in it. We did not have to purchase anything in addition. It was already part of what we were paying for. So we utilized that, that application. So there was a learning curve for me at the beginning, but now it's working very, very smoothly. So when we're looking at the lottery, some people will say, well, do we have priorities? And we do have two priorities, and both of the priorities are for convenience sake. So what I mean by that is if an applicant has a sibling, and we define for them what a sibling is, who is currently in that building. So we're here at Caner today, and Ms. Jessica Baggy's in the back there. She's our department head for school counseling here. So she would then go through and look at the kids who put in that they had a sibling in the building. So it was then we were able to verify that, yes, indeed, there is a sibling. And the sibling, as I said, is the legal definition. They're related by blood, they're related by marriage, step person, and they reside in the same house, well, foster child as well, and they reside in the same household. Those are the key things that we're looking for. Many times we've had people say, well, my cousin is like my brother, but those are our stipulations. And then the second is that we have a employee of CTECS who works in the building with that student. And I say it's a matter of convenience so that you're not going to multiple schools for kids at multiple places, or you're here working, you get that. So, so that's the reason we have those two priorities. And then after we actually have that drawing, we then have the wait list that's created. After the first round, which was run in March, we did not create a wait list. What we did instead was put everybody just back in and then randomized them again, did our next selection in mid-March.
I've had a question, Patty.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the front, which I just didn't understand it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't understand it. No, the priority.
Yes.
Explain that to me a little bit, like you get extra weight, do you get?
Sure. So I explained to Alice, I kind of think of it as you have an extra ticket.
Okay.
You know, so you have your application. I've checked that to the weight. So I checked that I do have a sibling. So that gives me almost like 2 tickets.
Okay,
So it gives you that, it's not guaranteed,
understood.
but we try to keep families together.
Okay.
And same thing with someone.
I got it.
Okay,
Okay, so you're still in the lottery,
you're still in the lottery.
so then how does, I don't understand how,
The computer does it. So the computer can see.
they randomize it.
They
in some-
randomize
In
it.
some fashion, the computer randomizes the chances because you're a student of staffing. Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
That's frequent for school plays, I'm sorry. All, we do that in Pasco Mountain schools. City of Haven does it, they're at school, it's like, when we used to watch the lottery on TV, the little ponies.
Yes.
And the ones that, you open up the top, little ball moves in.
Huh.
It's like if there's, we call them preferences, sibling preference or staff preference, it's like they're still in there, still in the air machine, but those balls have a little bit more weight than like jumping.
Yeah, they might not go quicker. I like that one. I use that one again.
Thank you.
I think we may want to refrain from that. Yeah.
And then this gets a little deeper into what is the student artifact. As I said, this is a choice. The students can either choose to do the written or the video. And in education, we always talk about choice because some students can express themselves better in different ways. So we thought that this was a good opportunity for that expression. And it does help us to gauge what their interest is in tech. And over on the right-hand side are the 5 questions that they have to answer, they're required to answer. And some of them are just amazing. Some of them are, brief, but they answer it. So it's all based on the student. So that's really clear for your information there, which is how do you know. And then the next slide we have is comparing the lottery, our current lottery system, to our traditional selection process that we use. We used that last year and the previous year. We've only been doing applications of the electronic applications for the past want to say 4 years. Yeah, past 4 years. So when we talk about the traditional criteria, as I mentioned earlier, we were looking at attendance. It had a score of 25 points, and it was weighted based on how many days the student was absent from that time frame. Currently in the lottery, we don't utilize that information. A lot of questions came up with folks last year about, well, my kid was sick, there was COVID, there was a lot of questions. Some schools count attendance differently than other schools. What do I mean by that? What's excused, what's not excused, and so on. The next was the written statement. So we did keep the written statement in. The difference is that it has the video component and we don't score it. That also last year had a point score of 25 points. And we had people who read those applications, read them, and then had to score them based on a rubric. As you can imagine, it was a very consuming process. The recommender survey, that was a form, it was a survey, it was a Google form that the middle school counselor would fill out telling us, what's their aptitude at working with others. Some different, I think it was about 10 questions that we would ask them that they had to rate on a Likert scale, 1 to 5. So again, subjective there, depending on what's your relationship with that student or not, or you don't do that any longer. And again, that had 25 points. So this last year could have had a total of 75 points attached to it based on those 3 items. And then the applications were then ranked based on those scores. Again, we don't do that for the lottery, it's random. After a student had received an offer last year, they really weren't accepted yet because we still had to go through some review of their documents. So we were looking at their discipline records and making decisions about students coming to our schools based on past experiences. Now, if you think back to when you were in middle school, or if you have a child in middle school, those little lovelies change from day to day. I used to say when I was in a middle school, assistant principal in middle school, the 7th graders, I never knew who was going to walk in my office from day to day, based on their personality, the way the sun was shining or not. They're just a bundle of emotion and changing and trying to figure things out. So point being is, how could you utilize that as a matrix to decide something about a student coming to us? So we also had some questions coming from State Department of Ed regarding that practice as well, because students were denied spots based on their discipline records from middle school. So with those questions, we have removed that as a criteria. It was strongly suggested, and I was very happy with that. We don't use the discipline records at all as a score or as a guide. We do collect the discipline records just so that our schools have them. And what I'm asking the schools to do is utilize that to help look for students who need any sort of interventions, to set up groups, set up if it's an attendance group or whatever it might be. And that's still kind of a work in progress. And then the last but not least, as I mentioned already, the statement in video. So that's the difference between the two and the why we're doing the 2 different things. As I mentioned when I first started, the admission cycle never ends. It just changes our focus of what we're doing. We're going to continue to monitor the waiting list, as I said, and send out another batch from the wait list, the questions from the wait list. Probably our next date of having responses from families is April 1st. So we'll probably give them a week just to kind of get everything cleaned up, and then we'll send out based on the what we have available. And we'll keep on doing that. We'll keep reaching out to families who have not yet been placed. I get daily questions from parents asking, am I still on the wait list? Where am I? What's going on? So trying to make sure that we communicate that with them. I instituted this year a color code system, and I got that from Resco. I thought that was a marvelous idea. So basically, if the student is in the top tier, I usually said the top 10 or so, depending on the school. Some schools turn over more quickly than others. They were considered green, so likelihood of them getting a seat was reasonable. The next tier, was probably about 15 to 35. Those were in our yellow tier. might get in, there's a lot of movement, but, not really. And then the last is the red, which are, sorry, probably not, you may, and if something amazing happens, but I recommend at that point that they make plans for the fall. And the reason that I think that's important is because we've had so many kids on our wait list so many years that have false hope. And not that I want to dash anybody's hope by telling them they're in the right group, but I want them to know that they need to do other options rather than sitting there waiting and being devastated that we have a second. And then we,
Patty, one more question, sorry, sir.
I'm sorry, you're done.
I could talk all day.
So, one quick question, but one is, so for instance, Derby Middle School, we just expelled a student, on March 8th. So that expulsion is 365 days until March 8th, 2026. If an 8th grade student has a pending expulsion, is that factored?
Pending expulsion, meaning that they're going out.
Yes.
So the state of Connecticut does not allow us, if the student has an expulsion in Derby Middle School, they have to complete that expulsion before they can come to us. Now, they may have applied, but they can't start with us until they fulfill that.
So can they, are they entering in the lottery for the beginning of the school year? Are they taking a spot?
I would not know that they have expulsion until we.
Interesting.
So yes,
So in theory, they could get accepted and have to sit out until their expulsion is over. Okay. And, okay, what percentage of students accept and then say, change their mind?
depends on the school. Some of our schools, like Willard has a huge turnover, Platt has a huge turnover. So I think, Jess, how many do you look at to say?
Well, we accepted about 225 on our first round, and we are at 218. And then we accepted that second round, and we're back in the 220s. So we fluctuate, but I think one of the things that impacted Painter this year was we got our acceptance letters out for some of the other schools in the area that are kind of our competition schools, like our career program in Waterbury. So we saw a difference. A lot of the times we do have a lot of fluctuations between saying yes or no.
So, and I think it changed year by year as well, too, depending on the kids. Some of our bigger schools, but something like Wyndham Tech does not have much of a fluctuation at all. So it really depends on the school and the factors that go with it. So that actually does conclude my conversation for today. Then I know you've been asking questions as I go along. I think, but does anyone have anything that I guess?
Quick question. The 10,570 students that are applying, what's the total pool that say that? Or what's the percentage that actually apply?
Of actual eligible students, something I don't know that, it's an interesting question, but that's a great question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question I've had is mostly with regional school districts. Students' success plans or SSPs are required, obviously you know this. Elementary and middle school usually doesn't follow the secondary school, especially regional schools. I find this very interesting to be student interest statement. My question is, has there been a conversation yet of grabbing the student interest statement and making it their student success plan for the school that they're going to?
Excellent question. And that is one of the things that I would like to be able to do more outreach to the middle school personally. And our schools themselves have great connections with their middle schools, but I would like to be able to have that outreach a little bit more. I'd also like to do more outreach to parents, visiting with PTOs to talk about what our schools, have them come in and see what the schools are. Because many of our parents have no clue what we do or what's expected. So I think that would be important to educate as well. So that's a great
I
point.
agree on the outreach part. I'm more interested in the applicant's student interest statement, their
I
video,
hear you.
what have you. Once they're accepted into this, will the actual,
That counts, is that correct? Does it go to the council? Will the counselors see the
They
individual?
can see that, yes.
So, yeah, that would be, at least getting it to the making sure the counselors see it, and then you're suggesting it kind of drive a plan. I mean, some of them may have written one sentence, but use it to start to drive the student success plan.
any,
at the high
yeah,
school
each
level.
number 30. students. I think that would be something to look at, something wise.
Gotcha, I wasn't connected.
Because of comparative analysis later on, as you said, they are fickle. Especially when they come in off of their 8th grade and 9th grade off of summer. They might have, go through all through exploratory, it might be a next step. Average weight for a decision of, well, I really like this, but I came here with the intent of such. I think this is the only district, my understanding in the state, that does something like this on this level. I think it should be applauded and touted, actually, if implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, that's great feedback.
This switch now, of course, from the traditional, decision-making admission process now to the lottery system. It would be really interesting to see what effect that has now on the student population. Like female versus male students, are they all interested in the same trades now, special needs population? So all this would be really interesting to see.
Agree, 100%.
Yes, we've asked Nicole Walsh who does much of our data and accountability to look at the lottery as soon as we're ready for exactly those questions. Because I think schools are concerned about the student population, whether they should had a change in where they come from, all those kinds of things. So she's going to do an analysis. She won't be able to get after we've admitted them, we could look at grades and other things like that. And so she'll be able to pull that once they're, kind of a little bit later in the cycle, but definitely interested in seeing what impact it may have had on kind of more traditional route.
Yeah, exactly.
I have more questions for you, I guess, the CTECS board. Any thoughts or any ideas, or should we be thinking about advocating for more schools?
I was gonna mention it when Paul was still here. So we owe I said this yesterday in our hearing, and I've said it to legislators. We actually owe the legislature 2 reports that were due in January that we did not do. And I think both of them provide us with an opportunity to tell that story and to do a little bit of that research. And Ronki's gonna help lead those planning processes. I think we're great if the board was engaged in some of those, some areas of it as well. But I think it is a place where we could discuss what the opportunities are for expansion. So there is probably, I keep saying there's a little bit of expansion ability within the existing high school, not 50%, maybe 10%. And I think we're getting closer to that. I think they have good numbers. The Bristol Tech model is one we could certainly look at to provide maybe regionally, not just in one location. The adult ed piece that Todd spoke to, some of the after-school things we're doing with districts, like what happens at Wilcox with Meriden Public Schools. And so I think those are the kinds of things we can lay out and potentially price a bit of, and say to legislators, you want us to take 50% more. Well, we can't, we're not going to double our size of high school. So how else can we get them? Can we get them in their juniors and senior years, and can we get them after, and that kind of stuff. So I think those 2 reports provide us with an opportunity to tell that story. We need to do so strategically and thoughtfully, but love to have your input on that. Get to it.
Obviously, the executive branch employees will speak on behalf of the legislative branch, but there has been over the years appetite for specifically seniors to do the same type of cycle that a junior would have in the trades as like a career tech ed type of work release, but in an academic setting, and then finish up as an adult in secondary and post-secondary, just at basically the 5th year of the high school. Even though they're academics in high school, they have their diploma, it's just a crossover because of the capacity issue. Look, everybody wants a new shiny toy in their town. There's no question about that. Not gonna happen, plain and simple. If these became, there'll be very good models across. It's called everybody calls it the MAC. There's a reason why. It's called Manufacturing Apprenticeship Center. That's exactly why we named it that. That is a around-the-clock feeder for the manufacturers for the defense industry. No question about it. That's a very good model. This school in particular ran that way for decades. There's more need on that end than there is, in my opinion, for 9th through 12th. No question about it, because the statistics will show later on the portion of students that actually go on, and good for them, post-secondary, elsewhere, higher education, what have you. There's that need, and you can see in those that are actually going into the occupations that are taught 9 to 12, you need to put the 2 of them together, because we need that capacity now as graduates, we need them as learners. question about it. So instead of building more of these, we need to have like a second shift, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well,
Certainly.
But certainly there's also, Alice, an opportunity window if we're going to the
Yep.
school.
Yep.
Well, we can easily make the case, especially if we go for DS for in the school. So we, for a much larger school, because we have that type of capacity that we need to.
Absolutely.
we can make a super vinyl.
Super vinyl. Vinyl is
Vinyl's back.
definitely next. Vinyl's back. Okay, good. All right. Well, on that, thank you very much, Patty. This has been an arduous process, and I know some legislators may have reached out to you all as well, and just want you to know that I've met with whoever asked to meet with us and try to explain kind of where we were. So we'll continue to get a little bit of pushback, but I'm getting it on both sides. I've got people who are really excited because that kid who was not engaged at middle school and had a poor attendance record actually might get in and have a shot. And then, obviously their families who were fourth generation and this kid didn't get in and they're not happy about that.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention as well, and I apologize, but also to special programs, we have absolutely no idea if the student has an IEP or a 501 during application process. So I've had parents say to me, well, did he get in because he has a 504? I'm like, absolutely not. I have no idea.
Right.
So that's another thing to keep in mind as well.
Exactly. And as we discussed, we had an advocacy meeting earlier this week on special ed, and we fully expect that Javette and her team will have, something like, 500 PPTs to do to bring kids with IEPs into our system. So we expect to keep doing that. So, Madam Chair, thank you for letting us extend the time to give you some deeper reports.
Okay, so report of the chair, we have already going forward, the next board meeting will be April 30th. It will be an online meeting, so no further requiring. And April, we have the subcommittee meetings again. Okay, good. Do we have any old business? Do we have any new business? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
You, second, and you're. Any abstentions? If not, the motion carries and they're short of 10:56.
Great. So for those of us who do have the ability to stick around for the tour, Dr. Hilliard is going to talk us through that.